finish that?
I will.
Do it now.
Oh, it's so good. Once it touches the lips, so good. So good.
Welcome to episode 3 of Quarantine Dads. Another Sunday night recording, this time with snow.
Yeah.
6 inches.
Yeah, it's a lot.
On April 12th.
On April 12th.
I mean, 2 years ago we got, 18 in Minnesota?
Yeah.
On about April 20th, so I guess we're still behind the curve.
We are.
I'm Andy.
I'm Micah.
And we are just 2 dads living next door to each other, trying to find ways to pass the time through the end times, and doing that, talking to each other while drinking some spirits and talking about it.
Yeah, we've been drinking pretty heavily for about, this is day 3.
I think, this weekend was one of those weekends where it just felt like the kids wanted to run around outside and there wasn't really anything better to do on Friday and Saturday. And then on Sunday, when you wake up to a blizzard with wind blowing snow straight sideways, can something be straight sideways?
Yeah, it's like just horizontal with the ground, or, right? Parallel to the ground, not perpendicular, parallel to the ground. Like, horizontal rain is actually a sign of, tornadoes. Like, when you actually see rain that's basically straight side. You confused me, and you lost me.
Is it really?
Yeah, it is, actually.
All right. Well.
And then the sky turns green. You ever seen a tornado?
No.
Yeah,
no.
I've seen 2.
Never. I mean,
awesome.
I haven't seen a tornado. I've seen... Thankfully, I haven't seen a tornado. I've seen the sky that everyone describes as tornadic, but I've never seen a tornado emerge.
Yeah. I was like... that would have been 8 or 9. So, my son's age, playing Little League... And then we had to evacuate the baseball fields because the tornado was actually coming right towards us. We could actually see it, and we're like, it's time to go.
Yeah,
Northern Minnesota.
I umpired a lot of baseball when I was younger, and then through my 20s, and there were definitely a time or two where I did not pull teams off the field fast enough for the parents' liking, and would catch hell for about a full inning. Well, lightning was clearly, you can see it, but you can see lightning a long ways away, right? Yeah. And it was clearly miles and miles and miles and miles and miles and miles and miles, if not counties away. Mm-hmm. And I remember one parent specifically, I saw lightning, this and that and the other thing. And I turned around, and probably not my best moment, I went, I played in worse when I was 10. I don't know what your problem is. Probably not the thing to say as the umpire for someone who's got their 16, 17-year-old playing. But, I was in my mid-20s and thought I knew everything.
We all know we know everything in our 20s, don't we? And then we soon learn in our late 20s that we would know nothing, and we're just like Jon Snow because we know nothing.
Yeah, I think we established last week. Other than the last 40 minutes of Game of Thrones, I've never watched it.
Yeah, but I mean that's just a meme. That's an internet meme, right? That's the internet. It's not even the show. You know nothing, Jon Snow.
Yeah, no idea what you're talking about, Micah.
Well, I mean, it's safe to say I know the internet a little bit better than you do. And you know social media way better than I do, because apparently I'm not allowed to touch the Instagram.
Yeah.
Or I mean, maybe the Twitters, but
yeah.
That's just I know the retweet button. That's about it.
Yeah, if between episodes you want to follow along with us, we have @DadsQuarantine on Instagram and @DadsQuarantine on Twitter. I'll admittedly say that the gram is a little more active at this point than Twitter. Yeah. Twitter, I don't have any deep, pithy, random thoughts. So I think we monitor that for more industry news than anything. But Instagram, we have some lovely pictures of our drinking options. Yeah. Today, a lovely picture of the weather.
Yeah.
So we're gonna stop talking about the weather, though.
Yeah, because it's depressing.
Yeah. What else is going on?
And it's kind of like we have no other things to talk about, so let's just fill this with weather talk.
Yeah, I'm going to take your wife's infinity scarf off. I'm starting to get a little warm. Yeah. That sounds
a lot
weird. That sounds a lot weirder than I thought it would. I thought it would coming out.
Oh, that's not getting cut at all. That's in there now. That's on record. All right. That with the cardigan, though, was actually really... It fit well.
I want to point out that not only am I in a cardigan again for recording, but this is the 3rd different cardigan I've worn for all 3 episodes.
And your wife was going to comfort buy you 3 or 4 other.
Oh no, she comfort bought me one yesterday.
Okay,
I was feeling a little anxious about going into the grocery store and getting a few things and being the designated errand runner, especially because we went into a grocery store that decided that everything was going. They were like it was actually kind of brilliant. They decided that everything was going to be one-way traffic in the grocery store, right?
Yeah.
The problem is that this particular grocery store isn't our normal grocery store. And it's also a grocery store that whenever I'm there, their aisles are laid out in a way that don't really make sense. Like what goes
You
where.
haven't mapped it enough, right?
No,
Like
but even then, it's a very hard grocery store to map out because like half of their products will be in one aisle and then half of the same type of product will be in another aisle.
Yeah, it's like some animal put in the pizza rolls
Yeah.
by the snacks and appetizers and not next to pizza.
Exactly. Like there's a weird flow, not only just the unfamiliarity of it. So on top of that, they had on the ground taped out arrows and one-way signs for one-way traffic. So you could go one way down the even aisles and then the other way down the odd, or back
The
up
other
or down
roads,
the
yeah.
odd aisles.
Yeah.
And it was genius.
It's like a parking lot.
But the amount of extra walking you have to do when you're already confused and tense. Yeah, I had to lay under a weighted blanket for 20 minutes after I took my second shower of the day before I could come over to your house for dinner.
Oh, that sucks. But we blew off some steam. All right. So what we have, I'm super excited about this. We have Woodford Reserve Double Oaked, and it's their barrel finish select. And my go-to drink anytime I want to toss a few back, and it's the joke I've said to you, I've said to a few other good friends of mine. It's like, Mike has had a bad day or hard day. If he's drinking a Manhattan, I'm sleeping on the sofa. Woodford Reserve Double Oaked, fantastic bourbon that I'm very, very much looking forward to having a tasting of this evening. As you can tell, I've already had some before, and so
And we both had this plenty of times. Like you said, it can be kind of a standard, particularly around here in Minnesota. If you're out I know you travel, but I'm going to say in Minnesota, it's a really good one that you can kind of count on being behind people's bars.
Yep.
Because even the places with better bourbon and whiskey lists don't always have some of the stuff that catches your eye on hand, where they always have this on hand.
And I would say every single Marriott carries the plain Woodford Reserve.
Oh, really?
Yes. So that's that's where I stay when I travel. It's at Marriott's, just because they have a great point system and everything else.
So this is a little lower on the proof than the last couple we've done.
Yeah.
So this is 90.4 proof, so 45.2% ABV. Crack it open here.
Good proofread on that one.
You like that? I'm going to smell the bottle because...
That's what we do.
See, this bottle to me, you remember in Anchorman?
Mm-hmm.
When he first meets Veronica Corningstone and he's trying to be a big deal? Mm-hmm. It's like, Merlin Olsen, he's a friend of mine. He's got leather-bound books. Like, this smells like how I imagine Merlin Olsen's 1970s apartment smelling. With the leather-bound books.
The leather-bound books.
And the general debauchery and drinking of the time.
I used to hang out with Johnny Hopkins back in high school. We used to smoke that shit all day long. Step Brothers quote.
Well, that's a cut.
Yeah, that's a cut. Why? Why is that got to be a cut?
So a cube in the glass, float the cube. I'll pour Micah some first, and he can get right to it.
So good on the nose. Once it hits the nose. Cheers.
Cheers to you. Just a lot of...
My house smelled like this all the time. It was amazing.
It's like a lot of warmth. It kind of reminds me of...
Earthy.
Not only Merlin Olsen, but like my grandpa smoked a pipe growing up.
So did mine.
And that kind of warm smell, I'm not saying it smells like necessarily pipe tobacco, but that kind of warm essence when you walk into a house and there's that pipe tobacco's hanging out in the air.
It kind of reminds me of like pipe tobacco and a wood stove. Like a cabin in the woods north of here and a good pipe. Good wood fire in the evening and just...
It's fair.
That's just to the weighted blanket notion. Like this is like tucking me in.
Mm-hmm. So I threw away my first sip because you insist I always do. So I'm on to sip number 2.
Oh man, that first sip, so good.
What do you got?
The one thing that I would say that I really like about this is you get a lot of oak, double oaked it's like a good barrel, and I think this is probably why I like it so much in a Manhattan, is like I get a good orange flavor from it. Like, it balances extremely well from a citrus standpoint, but it's not just like, hey, it's citrus, it's orange, and it's distinctly orange. Mm-hmm. You know, you get, I think a lot of the really good Kentucky bourbons, you get a good cherry on the nose, and you get this with that as well. It's so good.
It's got some of my favorite qualities of bourbon. Yeah. And for me, what that means is I've noticed my favorite bourbons have just such deep caramel and vanilla notes. Yep. And they just sit, and they sit, and they sit.
Just hang out on the palate, and they just, Interestingly enough, don't really like I've bought some nice caramels and stuff like that. Don't really like caramel. Love caramel flavors and caramel notes in a good bourbon.
Yeah.
And it's actually probably the inverse of, like, I'm expecting the caramel notes that I get and I love so much in bourbon in the caramel itself, and it's probably because there's no booze in it, but I'm a little, like, I miss it. Like, it's like, this is missing something, right?
Yeah. I just think it's a warm hug.
Yeah. Warm hug. Like, earthy fire, like going home to Grandpa's.
It's like the Olaf of bourbons.
Olaf. It's just like a warm hug. We've been hanging out with our kids too much.
No, not too much. I love my kids.
I love my kids.
I think my kids are great. The Friday night, was it Friday night? My youngest, who turns 5 here shortly, I was trying to get them to go to bed, and she was standing in the hallway outside their bathroom, and I was saying, go to the bathroom and brush your teeth. And of course they're not listening to me, and they're both getting crazy. And I'm trying to keep my voice measured. It's something I'm working on.
Regulation.
Because, A, I have a temper. B, I raise my voice. But C, when I raise my voice, it's very sharp, and it kind of catches my kids off guard, even when I don't intend it to. So I'm trying to do the, like, I'm breathing through this, but I'm getting frustrated. Well, I'm really trying to work on that. And
we both heard each other raise voices.
Yeah, and that's when you know you spend a lot of time together, is when you start to scold each other's kids or instruct each other's kids as they run around the yard to not do things. But my 4-year-old
peek your head out the door and be like, "Don't pick those off the tree." Yeah.
My 4-year-old looks at me and she goes, "You'll never take my freedom." It's like, what? I'm looking around for William Wallace.
Yeah. You'll never take my freedom.
Your face isn't painted half blue.
She wasn't wearing plaid, was she?
No, and you don't have an army of haggard-looking men following you.
Had she seen Brave recently?
Oh, God. No! Like, I don't even know that she likes Brave. Of all the Disney movies, Brave is not one that's on heavy rotation in our house.
Interesting. I like it, actually. I know it's not on heavy rotation on ours, but I like the story that it had.
Do you know anything about... So, this came up... I don't know when this came up. In the last couple of weeks. Disney Plus did not have one of the Disney movies on it. And couldn't remember which one it was. I don't know. No, I don't think so. I want to say it was Moana or Brave, or it was one of the ones in the last like 10-ish years.
So they've been doing The Vault.
I was curious if Disney Plus, if you knew anything about if they were still doing The Vault, even though they had the streaming service.
Yeah, that was one of the knocks about Disney Plus, is like, even though it's going to be the streaming service, they're still going to put things in and out of The Vault, which means they're going to lock things up that you can't stream.
I mean, it makes sense.
I mean, that's how they make their monies.
Yeah, I mean, well, and it also gives the ability to, I suppose, like with kids the ages of ours, the idea of of new content.
Yeah.
Without having to produce new content to roll something in and out a little bit. So,
well, I even remember like when The Lion King came out, right? And then when The Lion King came back out of the vault, you're like, crap, I haven't watched The Lion King in forever. And it makes you rewatch that content again. By the way,
we're talking about mid-90s Lion King, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not the live act or the CGI
new one.
The John Favreau one. Yeah.
I haven't watched the new one.
It was actually pretty good.
Yeah?
Yeah. I liked it. I mean, I like the original Lion King just because mid-90s. That was kind of our time. However, I watched it again more recently with the kids, and I was like, this is super dark. A lot of Disney stuff is like super dark, and you just don't pick up on it from a kid's standpoint. You're like just so engrossed with what it is.
Well, it's always heavy themes, though. I mean, there was... When Frozen 2 came out, there was an article... I won't call it an article. It was a blog post, okay? Mm-hmm. It was lengthy, first of all. Far too lengthy for someone who just wanted to throw out an opinion about Frozen 2 and how it impacted their children. But the point of it was that Frozen 2 introduced this thing about death and kind of this offhand comment about death that Olaf makes about Anna and Elsa's parents. And he goes, they just... When he's giving the recap of the story when they go into the forest, which is probably the best part of the movie. That 2-minute, that 90-second recap.
Did you watch the recap that was in the credits, which is just equally as good? Yeah.
Awesome. But he says, and basically and then they died, the end.
Yeah.
And it just flat, matter of fact. And this article was like, oh, how dare they say explicitly that their parents died? There are children watching, and what do we do about that?
That's the common theme of all Disney movies, is somebody's got to be... It's
a single parent. 1996?
Yeah, it's a single parent or everybody's dead.
At least they didn't show it, because I remember Simba's dad going into the valley and getting overrun, and Simba watching.
And they trampled him. Trampled. Yeah.
Yeah, overrun in a very literal sense.
Yes.
It means trampled.
Yes.
Yeah. So, of course, I show my wife this. My wife looks across the room at our kids, goes, hey, you remember the first Frozen? You remember that, right? And they're like, yeah. And they're looking at her like she's got 3 heads. What are you talking about? We watched it last week. Of course we remember it. Yeah. She goes, what happened to Anna and Elsa's parents? And one of my kids goes, oh, they died. And then, that was my oldest. And then my youngest, who is a very, very loud talker and animated talker, goes, they died in a shipwreck! And I'm like, okay, they know.
Nailed it.
They know. It was, But my main point was, have you seen any of Disney's content that's animated in the last 20 years?
No, all of it, right?
Yeah.
Some sort of loss or some sort of tragic event. Shit, watch the beginning of Up. And try not, as a parent, try not to cry.
Have not seen Up.
Yeah, you can skip the first 15 minutes, because I was bawling the whole entire time. Because it's they find each other, and it's like this super cute couple that, they love each other so thoroughly.
Kind of like us.
I know, it is kind of like us. Even as little kids, they get married, they have the house, and they grow old, and she dies, and so he's the grumpy old crotchety dude. But the first 15 minutes is all their whole life and love together, and all the cool things that they've done and everything else. And you're sitting there, you're like, Jesus Christ, this is just a sob story. You just, and actually, the new one that just came out, the new Disney Pixar movie about magic. I watched that a couple of times, and you watched the end.
Onward?
Onward, yes. Such a good movie.
I think the girls watched that twice on Friday alone.
Oh, it's super good, but the ending, you get a little...
Yeah, it's sad. It's not sad it's triumphant in that realization, but it's still just kind of...
Yeah, just trying to reconnect with his dad, and his dad's... That touches us in a little bit of a weirder spot than when we don't have kids or anything else. I thought it was just super, super... I thought the way...
You know what that's called, Micah?
What?
It's called vulnerability.
It's vulnerability?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Opening yourself up to feel something.
We're a little vulnerable.
I just did something I haven't done in the first 2 weeks, which explains which explains how I feel about the Double Oaked and how we generally treat this bottle whenever it shows up during one of our evening hangouts. It was just an automatic reach for it and pour a little bit more in the glass.
Yeah. And you just want to keep drinking.
Yeah.
It's such a just time and time again. Mm-hmm.
So on the nose, cherry, some kind of
Oakiness.
Leather, oaky,
homey.
Tobacco type notes, a really homey, rich feel.
Mm-hmm.
And then a lot of caramel and vanilla. And as you drink, I think there's there's honey, and it stays really smooth. Like, this isn't something, and granted it's only 90 proof as well, but I don't drink this and experience any sort of burn that's a legitimate burn.
No, and you know, I really, really, I mean, you said it, I've said it, this is so good, and even the regular Woodford, and we'll probably actually do that when we do the liquor run, when we do 4 bottles. Mm-hmm. I think Woodford's going to be one of them. I think Basil Hayden will be one. Jim Beam. I'd probably do the Jim Beam that won some awards from a bourbon standpoint.
Blue Ribbon. It's won awards.
It's won awards.
I had a buddy in college. I've told Micah this story so many times, but I had a buddy in college and I went in small town Iowa where they sell, beer out of their gas stations, and because Minnesota doesn't necessarily do that, or Minnesota had 3-2 beer in gas stations where Iowa did not necessarily have that.
I have a fun story about that at the end of this.
And my buddy's buying a case of Pabst Blue Ribbon at 10:30 in the morning, getting ready for the day, and someone who you would affectionately refer to as a townie wandered in on his way, frankly, in the front door to the restroom, and just pointed at him over the cashier's checkout and went, "Blue Ribbon, it's won awards," and then just disappeared into the gas station bathroom.
So, I don't remember if it was Corona or if it was Heineken, but I know it was one of the big two. And I don't think it was Heineken, because Heineken now has like an alcohol-free one. I think it might have been Corona that chose to pay the fine instead of dropping the alcohol proof because they couldn't mess with their master recipe or something like that to 3.2. Not that matters anymore, because we don't have 3.2. Like, we have 3.2 still, but we can find, thanks to the Super Bowl being here a couple of years ago, we can now buy booze on Sundays.
Yeah, that was a big reason. It was a weird kind of antiquated law, and I get the dynamics of it, and I get the reasons for it, and we don't need to go down the road of a debate about legislative policy and liquor policy, because that's a whole different show and a whole different conversation.
And the reason we're not currently distilling.
Yeah, but at this point, it felt it had run its course. Like, it was so time. Whenever you talk to someone out in the community, unless they were directly connected to maybe a distributor or someone in the industry or a liquor store owner that had you could see the reason, unless they were directly connected to that person, it was like, why can't I buy on Sundays? It makes no sense.
And everybody that was on the liquor side, because I know a few owners of some liquor stores and stuff, and so I know you do too. Like, before it had passed, we're like, yeah, I mean, we're concerned. Some people were concerned about the drop off of being like, well, you're going to flatten our sales, and now I have to pay for extra hours and payroll and everything else,
which I think was a legitimate concern.
It is a legitimate concern. I mean, who wouldn't want to run a retail outlet where you're like, I am obligated to stay closed on this day because that's the legislation in
right.
the organization.
Especially if you're a smaller place where you're an owner-operator, at least in some capacity, to limit staff, because then it gives you, obviously, a day off without having to pay someone to be there, too.
Exactly.
But it was time, for lack of a better term.
And everybody that I've talked to since then has said it actually is an extra day of sales. It is not a decrement.
It makes sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, man.
So any other notes on this as you finish your first glass? Because I want to make sure we get
I will mind you, this. For the listeners, I also have a Woodford Manhattan sitting right next to my Woodford.
Have you been sipping that? I haven't been paying any attention.
I've been sipping on my Manhattan.
I mean, I started in your wife's infinity scarf and a cardigan, and I've now taken both of them off. I still have a t-shirt on.
You got a hat on, too.
But I'm warm. Yeah, it's a Timberwolves hat, too.
Take the hat off.
You know, there's a lot of people that knock this.
I like the look of that hat.
But the green that the Timberwolves have incorporated into their logo, and I forget what exactly they call it, which is mildly embarrassing because my family's one of about 200 charter season ticket holders left for the Wolves, so I should know these things. Mm-hmm. But the green they've incorporated into their logo, I actually love on their jersey combinations. I think they've done a really nice job with it, and not every organization that's used that bright green, it does it in a way I like.
Yeah, they have nice jerseys. I'm not a basketball fan. I'm definitely a hockey and baseball a bit, and then football, of course.
I mean, you were watching a Ronda Rousey documentary when I came over before taping tonight.
I was actually very much enjoying that. The more and more I get into kind of the MMA stuff, I enjoy watching it. Don't condone violence unless it's
such a
a beta fish fighting league.
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, I wanted to start one of those for 2 decades.
Is it still in development?
It's still in. I mean, if PETA ever hears this, they're going to be knocking down our doors. But
beta fish development, isn't that a thing? Wasn't that a good tech joke, or did I completely miss the mark?
That was.
I don't understand.
You know what that was? That was a. We've been drinking for about 2.5 days straight, and it's been some heavy days of drinking. I'm tired.
You missed my wit, didn't you?
I did. Gosh. I missed it. But it's in development. It's beta.
Yeah, you know my experience with MMA and jiu-jitsu over the last 10 years, and she did something for women's fighting that obviously remarkable to put it on the map.
Mm-hmm. She transformed MMA into what we now know, right?
And
really cool.
And you could see her. You could see that her shelf life in MMA, I think, was also going to be not necessarily limited, not limited in terms of talent, but limited in capacity, because the unfortunate thing of being the first dominant athlete in a sport like that, which obviously on the women's side she was.
Oh yeah, easily.
Is that the sport continues to evolve, and you saw it in the UFC with men's champions too. Mm-hmm. That they were very good at a skill set and defending against other skill sets, but eventually fighters became so well-rounded that they had a base skill set, but they were good at other things. And now that dominant skill set doesn't have the dominance it once did, and those champions started to fall a little bit.
I mean, you could take that whole philosophy of that methodology of a game-changing tech, a game-changing weapon, a game-changing tactic that completely revitalizes and basically transforms an industry, a methodology, the world. And it's only as powerful as it can be until somebody comes up with something that can defeat it, right? And that's where the work, the research, the effort, and everything goes in.
Right. And that's I have...
that got a little deep.
I've certainly had several jiu-jitsu instructors say this. It's one of those things that instructors are going to say to you, and when you haven't trained for very long, or they seem to say it even if you have trained for a while, at times when you need to be reminded of it, because you forget a lot of things. Mm-hmm. You forget what you know, and then you forget that the basics are still at the core of what you know, right? You know, if you have a 225-pound person, I weigh 170-ish. You know,
225.
Oh, there you go. 225-pound person that comes in as a white belt, and I've trained for 10 years, there's certain advantages tactically that I'm going to have over them that defeat their natural attributes and their 50-pound size advantage.
Right.
But you take someone who's 225 that has the same level of training,
right,
and now those things start to matter a little bit more. And that's where I think in the fight game, to tie it to Rousey, is she was a great judo fighter. You could tell her stand-up was lacking. And
once the bronze medalist and the first U.S. person, man or female, to win a gold, or to win not a gold medal, she won bronze, but to medal in judo.
And when the women's game evolved enough that high-level strikers showed up, you knew immediately that was going to be a problem for her. Because if she can't get her hands on someone, you neutralize, obviously, her biggest asset.
If you can keep your distance, if you can keep yourself away from her and don't give her the option to grab an arm, that's how you beat that.
Which is why I've never been in a bar fight, because I just walk away from any of those situations. I don't... that's the best way to not have someone grab onto you or engage with you, is just move away from it.
So I did martial arts and a little bit in high school, and then I did a little bit right after high school with one of my friends, and then obviously I got into a little bit of the MMA stuff kind of before I met my wife, and definitely love to tumble. I'm what's called hypermobile, so I have really, really weird flexibility. Like, you notice the elbows.
Your elbows are creepy flexible. I don't like it.
And my shoulders and everything else are like that as well.
Mine are not. I'm pretty sure my right elbow is just all scar tissue at this point.
But I had one of my buddies, I still remember it, we were drinking and we were hanging out, and we decided to kind of start roughhousing, and his name's Dave. He's really, I mean, he did a lot of MMA. He's a very well-built person, and he had me in an arm bar, and I was like, you can keep going because it doesn't hurt yet. Oh. And he had me at just this really weird, because he didn't realize my elbows bent back as far as they did. And I actually was able to twist out of it, which was kind of fun because of how far my elbows twist. I felt like that would have been kind of fun to if I actually got into it a little bit more, but I don't remember.
Elbows like that are frustrating.
Yes. A little extra mobility.
So how's the finish on this for you? Because I'm empty, you're empty. So let's wrap up this bottle, because both of us are empty.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. It is so hard to... I just want to say a 10, because this is... From an availability, a price, and the double oaked is a little harder to find, but even their regular one is just... Woodford is just such a good quality bottle that, you know, even from double oaked to the regular one, which we'll review here in a week or two.
That's on-air production, by the way. I have no idea what the schedule is, so don't quote Mike on that if you're waiting for the just straight Woodford.
Well, and that's going to be the liquor run, right? Because we wanted to do a bunch of just like those 750 bottles that you can get 4 of. I said 3 of them. The 4th one is up to be determined, and so I think, man, I would go 9.2.
That's actually exactly the number that was in my head.
Really?
Yeah, I think there's plenty of flavor that shows up throughout, and for me, everything stays rooted in that caramel and vanilla. And then, like I said earlier, honey shows up, I think, the more you drink it. But everything stays rooted in that caramel and vanilla, and considering how much I love those flavors, it's hard for me to think anything less than a 9. It's smooth, it's long, there's no real burn in it. It's just, like I said, it's the warm hug of bourbons.
Yes.
So, and I'm not giving a warm hug as an affectionate person. One of my love languages is touch. I can't give it less than a 9. So 9.2 is exactly what I had.
This is your weighted blanket of bourbons.
It is. Yeah. Yeah, we'll go with that.
Yeah, the weighted blanket.
Yeah, there you go. So a 9.2 on the Woodford Reserve Double Oak.
So do you get the orange, though? Like, you a little bit?
I think I get more honey than orange.
Yeah.
But I can understand the orange. It's just, it's not something that my palate completely picks up. And I will be honest that as we've drank together, my palate is developing, because part of the reason I am so as interested in bourbons and whiskeys is because of our friendship and how that's evolved, where I'm trying new things and I'm going outside of just having the 2 bottles in the house that I quote unquote know I like.
You just told me that you're like, I need a new bourbon rack.
I looked the other day and I don't like this was not the case 90 days ago, and I looked and all of a sudden 25-ish bottles of bourbon and whiskey in the house, and I have no storage space. My liquor cabinet's small, so now I have several bottles stored among books on my bookshelf as decorations and things like that.
Well, we can go to the garage. Obviously we have wood, and I've got some good reclaimed cedar that we could just do. What we should do is just the base, and we'll jig cut it so that it's got the little trusses to basically throw the bottles in, and then you can just build a pyramid. So you just build the base, and then you just stack. If you've got rounder bottles on them, you just stack them up.
I'm good to do that.
That's actually one of the hardest parts about collecting bourbon. Because I don't know how much I have, but I know
we vaguely counted last night, and I think we stopped at like 55-ish that we could see, so we're assuming 60, 65, something like that.
And some pretty good bottles in that. Maybe we'll take a pick in the near future. Yeah. I continue to grow that as we do this podcast, but it's so hard to actually start storing some of the more unique bottles because they're not just the regular... It's not wine, right? Like, that's the hard part about it, is it's not a wine bottle in a uniform shape. Because, I mean, even this one, right, is rectangular, it's short, it's in this,
This is at least a little easier to store depending on what your storage space is, because you don't deal with the height issues. That's part of my challenge with the cabinet that I have, is that the tall, longer bottles are about 1.5 inches too tall for the biggest space I have. So then I have to figure out where else to put them. But the bottle itself, We agreed right off the bat.
9.2.
9.2. A review will be up on Distiller.
And our site.
And our site, QuarantineDads.com. And on Distiller, our reviews are listed under Quarantine Dads. So that review will be there when the podcast drops, as the kids say, which is on Tuesdays, by the way. So if you're looking for us, Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts, you can also find us directly on QuarantineDads.com.
Oh, no, you don't need to pour that. I already got it in a shaker. QuarantineDads.com/episodes. But we record these over the weekend sometime and then drop everything on Tuesday when you're looking for us. So give us a rating, give us a review, connect with us on social media as well. At Ice Cube.
Yep. At Dad's Quarantine on Instagram and Twitter. I feel like I'm going to forget this, so I'm getting it all out now.
Nice. Yes. So we're going to do a little after hours, which is the surprise cocktail. Mm-hmm. I put a surprise in here that you did not see. And this is a Manhattan, but there's a little special to it.
All right. Well, while you're pouring that, I will say again that I'll say that I was turned on to Woodford because of your travels, in that you felt that that Woodford is such an available spirit for you to get a predictable Manhattan when you're on the road traveling.
To be completely honest, you're sitting there and you're like, I have per diem, I'm traveling for work. I'm really sick of steakhouses, to be completely honest, and I know I've said that to you several times. Like, I would rather go to like a good fish place and get like some really good fish that's grilled, and or just like a local place that's like, you know, a little bit more farm to table and everything else. So it's just any place I go. Like, if you're going there and the plating is, I mean, if you're looking at an open table, that's pretty much what I use to book everything when I'm out on the road, unless it's a place that I go to all the time, right? Like we talked about at Tennessee and Nashville. And then, you know, I have my regular places all over, but, you know, like, I look at that, I look at Yelp and everything else, try and get a good mix and feel for it. Any place that I go, I don't even have to look at a menu, and if I'm in the mood for a Woodford Manhattan, I can just say Woodford Manhattan and I know they have it. Like, that's, you don't have to worry about that from the standpoint of, hey, you know, are they going to have this? You know, and I even have some friends of mine that really love, like, Basil Hayden on the rocks. Like, I have a good buddy of mine. Like, if we're going out and we're actually going to have some drinks, I'm going to keep drinking Manhattans, and if I know he's going to drink with me, it's just Basil Hayden on the rocks. And we've run into places like, we don't have Basil Hayden. I'm like, then he'll do Woodford.
Right. So, you made the after hours cocktail here. You said you put a surprise in it, but the main thing is that it's a Woodford Reserve double oaked Manhattan. Mm-hmm. A standard for us if you're having a cocktail. I know I've made my dad this cocktail several times when he's in the mood for an actual cocktail.
Yep.
So, cheers.
Mm-hmm. Cheers, bud. Yeah. Make it as awkward as possible.
Yeah, there.
There we go. It's just so good. So did you pick up on what it is?
No, because my nose wanted to tell me something that's not in the taste, so I'm not quite sure what to make of it. Because my nose picked up cola, which was weird.
No, there's no cola in it.
No, and I know there's no cola in it. Like, I know you wouldn't, like, make a drink like this and throw in, you know, here's a little splash of cola on top of your Manhattan.
Liter cola?
But it's got, I can't quite tell what it is.
So, and we obviously link the actual spirits themselves on our review site so that you can go and you can learn the tasting notes. You can actually see the site itself. You can see what, you know, like what each of the individual brands are and what they have and everything else. So on their site, they actually have a double oaked and rye Sazerac.
Are you telling me there's Sazerac in this on top of it?
I put 1 ounce of Sazerac rye in it. Oh my gosh! Which is, it's delectable, isn't it? So I was looking at this, and this is on their site, and I was
just say no more. Like, I want to just be done here, and my gosh, that explains it. It's so good because it was what I was picking up with when I said cola was the touch of spice of the rye
right at the
coming
end.
Through right at the end, where it had this like syrupy
bite.
Yeah,
yep.
And definitely the rye. Oh, gosh, so good. So this is a Woodford Double Oaked and Sazerac Manhattan.
Sazerac Rye, yes.
Oh.
And it was... I mean, this is for both of us, so...
Bless you, child.
Thank you, sir. I tried to do good. I'm trying to figure out not...
How did you try?
I try. And I've been trying not to just be like, oh yeah, so we're doing another Manhattan, right? I was trying to
really
mix it up.
easy to do with us.
Yeah. Be like, hey, and so what we're doing tonight in the surprise cocktail is Manhattan.
Yeah.
So we spiced it up a little bit, but actual Sazerac Rye, which can be hard to find, and is something that we will review in a later episode, hopefully.
Yeah, in Minnesota it can be hard to find. You can see it on the shelves at your favorite store, and then it'll disappear for a while and then show back up. Yep. So it's always a bottle to grab when you see it if you're in Minnesota. That's our observations.
Expensive.
No, not at all.
No, it's a little unicorn that sits on the shelf, and you're like, yes, I will take you with me.
Yeah. Oh, with that, I am going to enjoy the hell out of this drink, and I think we're going to call it a night. So any final words?
You know, we can't go outside right now. And what I always tell my kids, whenever they ask to go outside, can't go outside, there are bears out there. So, with that...
When it snows 6 inches in April, you don't have to worry about it. With that, cheers.
Cheers. Let's have some good Manhattans. Enjoy our evening.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
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 Thanks for listening.
Thank you.